Hey everyone, Phil and Vanu here, back with the Athlete Spine. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. And today's topic is actually really interesting. A really devastating injury actually in motorsports.
So Robert Wickens has been in the news recently. If any of you are motorsports fans, you'll recall that back in 2018, about 3.5, 4 years ago, Robert Wickens was involved in a very, very serious car accident and was actually reported to be paralyzed and had lost the function of his legs.
Yeah, and if we look at the reports that have been out about that incident, right, they're talking about someone who had suffered a fracture in the spine and was essentially paralyzed after that injury. And so, how does that happen? Where was this fracture?
Yeah, so what the reports say are that this was a fracture in the upper thoracic spine around the T4 area, and the bones of the spine are numbered in the thoracic spine 1 through 12, and so this is in the upper part of the mid-back, basically. And this part of the spinal cord doesn't have any effect on your arms at all, but controls everything basically from about the nipple level down. And so in his case, with the severity of the spinal cord injury that he was reported to have, it affected his ability to walk, it affected his sensation in his legs. You've seen some of our earlier videos where some spine fractures don't need anything other than some rest. In this case, he had what sounds like a very, very serious spine fracture that probably was causing some instability, meaning that the spinal column was not competent anymore to protect the spinal cord. And also, more than likely, there was bone fragments or pieces of the fracture itself that were pushing on a spinal cord that caused the injury that then required an emergent surgery.
And so the reason why surgery is so important in this case is that we all know the spinal cord is really important for just our function. And so, the sooner we can act on protecting the spinal cord, the better. And there's two main goals to this type of procedure. One is decompression, right? Something is compressing the spinal cord, likely bone fragments or the instability of the fracture here, and we need to decompress the cord and give it more room to breathe. And the second aspect, or the second goal of this type of surgery is stabilization. Just like a fracture anywhere else in your body, right? If you now have an unstable region, it needs to be stabilized. And in the spine, we accomplish this with a combination of pedicle screws commonly and rods.
Yeah, and these are screws that basically go into the bones of the spine above and below the region of the fracture, and then the rods link the screws together and provide stability around the fracture site. The important thing that I think is different about spinal injuries and spinal fractures is that as surgeons, we can get pressure off the spinal cord, we can stabilize the fracture, but ultimately we cannot, in the year 2022, repair the spinal cord itself. And so this is something where once we stabilize the injury, it's a lot of rehab and waiting and watching and seeing to what extent the spinal cord can recover.
Yeah, because, right, when we say spinal cord injury, there's actually a large spectrum of that, right? On one end of the spectrum, which is probably less severe, you can have some numbness or tingling intermittently or even transiently, and that gets better within minutes, days, or even a couple weeks. The other end of the spectrum is, right, the inability to feel anything or move anything below the level of the injury. And so, the type of recovery is really based on the severity of the injury.
Right, and often after surgery, patients wake up and they basically have the same deficits or the same problems that they had immediately before going into surgery, or in a best case scenario, you immediately will get some improvement in those symptoms. It's important to note that recovery can take place for a long period of time after surgery, and for up to 18 to 24 months, you can often expect to see some recovery. After about 2 years or so, it's fairly uncommon for people to continue to recover more function at that time.
So it's absolutely remarkable that Robert's able to win this race. And even if you look at his own Instagram page, you're seeing videos of him walking and standing with assistance and working out. What an incredible recovery, an incredible individual who's been able to work towards this. So the bottom line is this, this type of injury can occur with any sort of high-speed, vehicle collision. The initial reaction can be devastating and something as severe as being paralyzed in the legs like he was. But with urgent surgery and the time and a focus on recovery, a lot of people may be able to observe some improvement in the function to the point where they can return to the activities that they enjoyed doing even before the injury, maybe with some modifications along the way.
Yeah, and we've seen injuries like this in football and ice hockey, and this can happen in day-to-day life if someone is in a high-speed car accident, like Phil said. The amazing thing for Robert is that now he's back in the winner's circle. He won the Michelin Pilot Challenge recently with the use of some hand controls for working the gas and working the brakes. And it really is tremendous for him to be able to get back to racing and back to some of the activities that he loves.
Yeah, so what a fun story today. Well, thanks so much for joining in. Don't forget to like and subscribe and follow us on Instagram at The Athlete's Spine.
Till next time, take care, everyone.
See you later.